Something is quietly unfolding in Pittsburgh and it's not getting enough attention. The Steelers aren't just exploring wide receiver options, they might be preparing for a much bigger move. Rumors are building, pressure is rising, and the timing feels intentional. The real question is, what are they planning behind the scenes? Because one move they're considering could change everything faster than anyone expects. Something feels off in Pittsburgh, and it's not just rumors, it's a growing problem nobody inside the organization is openly admitting. On paper, the Steelers' wide receiver room doesn't look terrible. You've got size, you've got speed, and you've got names that should, in theory, produce. But when you actually break it down, the cracks start to show fast. Because this isn't about talent anymore, it's about fit. Right now, the Steelers are missing something critical, a true separator. Someone who can consistently win one-on-one, create space instantly, and give their quarterback a reliable target when plays break down. And that's not just a nice-to-have, that's essential in today's NFL. The biggest issue, their current receivers overlap in style. They're physical, they're vertical threats, but they're not the kind of precise route technicians who can control the middle of the field or bail out a struggling offense on third down. And that limitation quietly changes everything about how this offense operates. Defenses know it. They can press more, they can sit on routes, they don't have to fear being picked apart underneath. And when that happens, the entire passing game becomes predictable and easier to shut down. Now here, where things get even more interesting. If Pittsburgh is seriously preparing for a veteran quarterback, someone like Aaron Rodgers, who historically prefers experienced, polished route runners, then this problem becomes even bigger. Because Rodgers doesn't just throw to open receivers, he trusts timing, precision, and chemistry. And right now, that chemistry piece is missing. That's why these trade rumors aren't random. They're not just nice upgrades, they're signals. Signals that the front office knows something isn't working and they're trying to fix it before it becomes a full-blown issue during the season. But there's another layer most fans aren't talking about. This isn't just about improving the offense, it's about pressure. Pressure to compete now, pressure to maximize a short window, pressure to deliver results for veterans who don't have time to wait for development. Because when you look at this roster, it's not built for a slow rebuild, it's built to win immediately. And that changes how aggressively a team operates. Suddenly, trading picks doesn't seem so crazy. Suddenly, taking on a big contract feels justified. Suddenly, going after a proven receiver, even with risks, starts to make a lot more sense. Because standing still might be the worst option of all. And that's exactly why the Steelers are being linked to so many wide receivers right now, not because they want to make a move, but because they might not have a choice. But if Pittsburgh really is this desperate, the next move they make could either fix everything or expose a much bigger problem. Now here, where things start to feel real and a little dangerous. The moment Davante Adams was linked, even loosely, to the Pittsburgh Steelers, everything changed. Because this isn't just another name, this is a proven, elite route runner who instantly fixes the exact problem we just talked about. But let's slow this down for a second. Reports suggest the Los Angeles Rams have at least considered the idea of moving Adams. Not confirmed, not guaranteed, just discussed. And in the NFL, that alone is enough to spark serious speculation. And if you're Pittsburgh, you have to at least think about it. Because pairing Adams with Aaron Rodgers again, that's not just a storyline, that's a potential shortcut to instant offensive chemistry. We've already seen what that connection looks like at its peak: timing, trust, and almost telepathic execution. But here's the catch nobody can ignore. Adams isn't cheap, not even close. We're talking about a massive cap hit. We're talking about restructuring contracts, shifting money around, and potentially sacrificing future flexibility. And for a player in his 30s, that raises real questions: how much elite production is left? And that's where the debate gets intense. Some fans believe this is a no-brainer. You bring in a veteran star, maximize your window, and go all in. Others aren't so convinced. They see the risk, the age, the financial pressure, and they wonder if this is a move that looks better on paper than it does long-term. Then there's the Rams' side of this. Would they really move a player who was still producing at a high level, a red zone weapon? a reliable target, a leader in their offense. It doesn't fully add up unless there's something behind the scenes we're not seeing. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's roster direction, or maybe it's just leverage in negotiations. Because in today's NFL, not every rumor is about making a trade, sometimes it's about creating options. Still, the possibility alone is enough to raise eyebrows. Because if Adams does become available, Pittsburgh instantly becomes one of the most logical landing spots. The need is there, the potential quarterback connection is there, the urgency is definitely there. But logic doesn't always equal reality. And that's the part that makes this situation so unpredictable. Because right now, this feels like one of those moves that could happen but probably won't, until suddenly it does. And if Adams is only the beginning, the next name linked to Pittsburgh might be even more unexpected. Going all in sounds exciting until you realize what it actually costs. Because for the Pittsburgh Steelers, chasing a big-name receiver isn't just about upgrading talent, it's about reshaping the entire future of the franchise in one aggressive move. And that's where things get complicated. On the surface, adding a star like Davante Adams feels like a game-changer. Instant production, immediate chemistry, especially if Aaron Rodgers ends up under center. It's the kind of move that signals urgency, that says, we're trying to win right now. But behind the scenes, that decision comes with pressure most fans don't fully see. First, there's the financial side. To make a deal like this work, Pittsburgh would likely have to restructure multiple contracts, push money into future years, create short-term space at the cost of long-term flexibility, and while that might solve today's problem, it can quietly create tomorrow's crisis. Because eventually, those cap hits come back. Then there's the draft capital. Trading for a proven star almost always means giving up valuable picks, and those picks aren't just numbers, they're cheap, controllable talent. The kind of players that help you stay competitive year after year. Lose too many of them, and suddenly your roster starts aging fast. But here's the part that really raises eyebrows. When a team goes all in, they're not just betting on a player, they're betting on a timeline. A short one. You're essentially saying, we believe this roster right now is good enough to compete for a championship. And if that belief is even slightly off, the consequences hit hard. Because there's no slow reset after going all in. It's boom or it's a long road back. And some fans are starting to question whether Pittsburgh is truly in that position. Are they one elite receiver away, or are there deeper issues that one big move can't fix? That's where the conversation quietly shifts. Because this isn't just about adding talent, it's about identity. Are the Steelers building something sustainable, or are they chasing a window that may not be as open as it seems? And in today's NFL, that line is incredibly thin. One aggressive offseason can turn a contender into a powerhouse or into a team stuck dealing with contracts, expectations, and missed opportunities. So yes, the idea of going all in sounds bold. It sounds exciting. It even sounds necessary. But it's also risky in ways that don't show up until it's too late. And if that risk wasn't enough, the next rumored target might force Pittsburgh to make an even tougher decision. This is where the conversation takes a sharp turn, because the next name being whispered isn't a veteran, it's a gamble. Marvin Harrison Jr. And the moment his name entered trade discussions, even as speculation, it instantly split opinions. On one side, you have the believers, the ones who still see the same elite prospect who came into the league with sky-high expectations, the polished route running, the size, the natural ability to create separation, the kind of skill set that doesn't just fit an offense, it transforms it. But on the other side, there's doubt. Because the reality is, his NFL start hasn't matched the hype. Yes, there have been flashes, moments where you see exactly why he was so highly rated, but there have also been inconsistencies, drops in key situations, games where he disappears, production that, while solid at times, hasn't taken that expected leap. And in a league where expectations come fast, patience runs out even faster. Now here, where things get interesting. Some reports suggest the Arizona Cardinals could listen to offers under the right circumstances, not actively shopping him but not completely shutting the door either. And if that's true, it creates a rare situation. A potential buy low opportunity on a player who was once considered untouchable. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is the kind of move that feels very different from chasing a veteran like Davante Adams. This isn't about maximizing a short window, it's about betting on upside. But that's exactly what makes it risky. Because now you're not just asking, can he help us right now? You're asking, do we believe he'll become what everyone thought he would be? And that's a much harder question to answer, especially when the price is still likely high. Even with his early struggles, the Cardinals aren't just going to give him away. Reports suggest it could still take something close to a first-round level package. And for Pittsburgh, that's a serious commitment for a player who hasn't fully proven himself yet. That's where fans start to hesitate. Because this isn't a guaranteed upgrade, it's a projection. And projections can go either way. If it works, you've just secured a long-term WR1, a foundational piece, someone who could define your offense for years. But if it does, you've sacrificed valuable assets for a player still trying to figure it out. And in today's NFL, that margin for error is razor-thin. There's also something else quietly fueling this debate. Fit. Would Harrison thrive in Pittsburgh's system? Would he get the targets, the trust, the role he needs to develop? Or would he become another talented player stuck in the wrong situation? Because sometimes it's not about ability, it's about environment. And that's the part nobody can confidently predict. So now the Steelers are starring at a completely different type of decision. Safe, proven production or risky long-term upside. And depending on which direction they choose, it could define not just this season, but the next several years. And if those big-name swings feel too risky, the Steelers might turn to a completely different tier of targets that no one is talking about. Not every move makes headlines, and sometimes that's exactly the point. While fans are locked in on blockbuster names like Davante Adams or high-upside swings like Marvin Harrison Jr., there's another layer to this story that's flying completely under the radar. The quiet market. The overlooked names, the players who aren't trending but might actually make the most sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is where things get interesting. Because reports and speculation have started linking Pittsburgh to a group of lower-cost receivers, guys like Jalen Hyatt, Quentin Johnston, and Dontavian Wicks. Not flashy, not headline-grabbing, but not irrelevant either. Let's start with Hyatt. Some fans believe he simply hasn't had the right opportunity yet. A change of scenery could unlock something, but others look at the production or lack of it and see a player struggling to carve out a role, limited impact, minimal consistency. And that raises a tough question: are you adding upside or just adding another uncertainty? Then there's Johnston, arguably the most intriguing name in this tier. He's shown flashes, big play ability, red zone presence, the kind of physical tools that should translate into production. But there's also been criticism, drops, limited route precision, inconsistency. It's the classic case of potential versus performance. Some fans believe he's being undervalued. Others think teams already know exactly what he is. And that divide makes him one of the most debated options on the board. Now shift to Wicks. This is where the conversation changes slightly. Because unlike the others, Wicks brings something Pittsburgh clearly needs: separation, the ability to create space against coverage, to get open consistently, and in an offense lacking that skill set, it stands out immediately. But again, there's a catch. Drops. A recurring issue that hasn't fully gone away. And for a team already dealing with offensive inconsistency, adding another question mark at such a critical position feels risky. Still, here's the bigger picture most people are missing. These moves don't require massive sacrifices. We're talking late-round picks, minimal financial commitment, low-risk, high-variance decisions, and in some ways that might actually be the smarter approach. Because instead of betting everything on one big move, you spread the risk. You bring in competition, you create depth, you give yourself multiple chances to hit on the right player. And if one of them clicks, you've solved your problem without mortgaging the future. But there's also a downside. These aren't guaranteed solutions. They're bets, calculated ones, but bets nonetheless. And for a team that might be trying to win now, relying on maybe instead of proven could backfire fast. So now the Steelers are facing a completely different kind of decision. Go big and accept the cost, or go quiet and trust the process. And sometimes the quiet moves end up being the ones that matter most. But if Pittsburgh plays it safe here, it could mean they're preparing for something much bigger behind the scenes. At some point, this stops being about names and starts being about fit. Because here's the uncomfortable truth, the Pittsburgh Steelers don't just have a talent issue at wide receiver, they have a fit problem, and that's a much deeper concern. On paper, the room looks solid. Size, athleticism, flashes of production, it's all there. But when you actually watch how the offense functions, something feels disconnected. Roots don't sync, timing feels off, separation is inconsistent. And that's not always about ability. It's about how players fit together. Take a look at the current structure. You've got bigger-bodied receivers who thrive downfield, physical players who can win contested catches. That sounds great until you realize they operate in similar areas of the field. Which means defenses don't have to adjust much. They can press coverage, sit on routes, force tight window throws, and suddenly your offense becomes predictable without even realizing it. That's where the real issue begins. Because in today's NFL, diversity in skill set isn't optional, it's essential. You need a route technician, a quick separator, someone who can dominate short and intermediate zones, someone who gives the quarterback an easy option when everything else breaks down. And right now, Pittsburgh doesn't consistently have that. Now bring in the quarterback factor. If Aaron Rodgers ends up leading this offense, the importance of fit becomes even more critical. Rodgers isn't just throwing based on reads, he's throwing based on trust, timing, and precision. He expects receivers to be exactly where they're supposed to be, at the exact moment he expects them there. If that timing is even slightly off, the play collapses. And that's why simply adding talent won't fix everything. You could bring in a big name, a highlight player, someone with stats and reputation, but if their play style doesn't complement the rest of the offense, you're just stacking pieces that don't fully connect. That's how teams end up looking good on paper, but struggling on the field. This is also why some of the lower-profile names we talked about earlier are still in the conversation. Not because they're better players, but because they might be better fits. A receiver who can separate quickly, who understands spacing, who thrives in short yardage situations. That type of player might not dominate headlines, but they can quietly transform an offense. And that's the part fans often overlook. Because fit isn't flashy. It doesn't trend, it doesn't create viral reactions. But it wins games. So now the Steelers aren't just asking, who's the best receiver available? They're asking a much more important question. Who actually makes this offense work? And depending on how they answer that, it could completely change the direction of their season. Because getting the wrong fit doesn't just waste a move. It can expose a flaw that was already there. And if the Steelers misjudge that fit, the next move they make might not fix the offense, it might reveal just how broken it really is. What if the best move is the one nobody's really paying attention to? Because while the spotlight is locked on blockbuster names and risky gambles, there's a quieter path the Pittsburgh Steelers could take, one that doesn't dominate headlines but might actually solve their biggest problem. And it starts with a simple idea: efficiency over hype. Instead of chasing a star like Davante Adams or gambling on upside like Marvin Harrison Jr., Pittsburgh could target a receiver who does one thing extremely well. Get open. Consistently, quickly, reliably. Not the flashiest trait, not the most talked about, but in an offense that struggles with separation, it's arguably the most valuable. That's why some insiders and analysts have quietly pointed toward players like Dontavian Wicks or even underused options like Marvin Mims Jr. Not stars, not proven WR1s, but specialists. And sometimes that's exactly what an offense needs. Take Wicks for example. He's not dominating highlight reels, but when you break down the film, there's something there: his ability to separate against coverage, his understanding of spacing, the way he finds openings in zones. That's the kind of skill set that doesn't just add depth, it changes how defenses approach you. Suddenly, you can't just crowd the outside, you can't just rely on physical matchups, you have to respect the middle of the field again. And that opens everything up. Now look at Mims. Different type of player, more vertical, more explosive, a deep threat who can stretch the field instantly, and even if he's not getting heavy usage right now, that speed alone forces defenses to adjust. Pull safeties back just a step, and the entire offense breathes easier. These aren't franchise-changing moves, but they're system-changing moves. And that distinction matters. Because instead of forcing a massive roster shift, you're making targeted adjustments, fixing specific weaknesses without overhauling everything else. It's a smarter, more controlled approach. But here, where it gets even more interesting. These moves come cheap. We're talking late-round picks, minimal cap impact, low commitment, and in today's NFL, that kind of flexibility is valuable. Because it keeps your options open. You can still draft a receiver, you can still make another move later. You're not locked into one decision that defines your entire offseason. And that's where this strategy starts to make a lot of sense. Especially for a team that's balancing urgency with uncertainty. Because let's be honest, the Steelers don't just need a receiver, they need the right receiver, and that doesn't always come with the biggest name attached. Sometimes, it's the player who fits perfectly into what you're trying to build. The one who quietly fixes the problem without demanding all the attention. And if Pittsburgh plays this right, this could be the move that doesn't trend today, but gets talked about all season. And if this quiet move actually works, it could make the Steelers' biggest decision look a lot smarter than anyone expected. So when you step back and look at everything, this isn't just about wide receivers anymore. This is about direction. Because every name linked to the Pittsburgh Steelers, from Davante Adams to Marvin Harrison Jr., to the quieter options like Dontavian Wicks, represents a completely different path forward. And that's what makes this moment so important. If they go after Adams, it's clear they're pushing all their chips in. Win now, maximize the window, build around a veteran presence, especially if Aaron Rodgers becomes part of the equation. It's aggressive, it's bold, and it comes with real pressure to deliver immediately. But if they pivot towards someone like Harrison Jr., the message shifts. That's not just about this season, that's about the future. That's a bet on development, on upside, on building something that could last longer than a single run. It's riskier in a different way because now you're trusting projection over proven production. And then there's the third path. The quiet one. Targeting underrated players, filling specific gaps, fixing the offense piece by piece instead of swinging for one massive solution. It's not flashy, it won't dominate headlines, but it might be the most balanced approach of all. 3 options, 3 identities, and only one decision. Because here's the reality most fans are starting to feel. The Steelers don't have unlimited time. There's pressure building internally and externally, a roster that looks competitive but incomplete, a fan base that expects results, and a league that doesn't wait for anyone to figure things out. Standing still isn't really an option anymore. But moving too aggressively, that comes with consequences too. And that's why this situation feels so tense. Because no matter what they do, it's going to reveal something about how this organization sees itself. Are they a team ready to contend right now, or are they still figuring out what they truly are? That answer is coming soon. And it won't just show up in a headline, it'll show up in the type of move they make. Because sometimes, it's not the trade itself that matters. It's what the trade means. What it says about urgency, about confidence, about belief in the roster they've built. And right now, all signs point to one thing. A decision is coming that could define not just this offseason, but the entire direction of the franchise moving forward. And when that move finally happens, it won't just answer the rumors, it might expose what the Steelers truly believe about their chances this season.